So an episode on cephalopods in general, octopuses more specifically, has been in the back of my mind for quite a long time now, but a few things recently have brought it to the forefront. First was rewatching the movie Jurassic World, where one of the things that made the genetically modified Indominus rex so dangerous was the inclusion of cuttlefish DNA, giving it the ability to camouflage. Second, I began listening to the audio version of the book Remarkably Bright Creatures. Yes, it's a work of fiction, but one of the main characters is a giant Pacific octopus. And third, and seemingly unrelated at first, is that we're closing in on the playoffs for the National Hockey League. Now, what does that have to do with cephalopods, you ask? Well, I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan, and for Red Wings fans, the octopus is a symbol of the early days of the league when a team only needed to win 8 games to win the Stanley Cup. But anyways, the point is, I think it's time we take a closer look at cephalopods. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. Cephalopods are an interesting bunch. They've been around a long time, roughly 400 million years, give or take a few. There's over 800 known living species, and new ones are being discovered all the time. And there's about, 11,000 known extinct species. That number would probably be higher, but the soft bodies of cephalopods don't exactly fossilize well. Now, they live in the ocean, all the oceans in fact. None of them can tolerate fresh water, and there's only one, the brief squid, which lives in Chesapeake Bay, that even tolerates brackish water. Cephalopods can also be found at all depths of the ocean, from the surface to the deepest trenches, which can be nearly 36,000 feet or 11 kilometers deep. I'm guessing that having a squishy body helps one survive the crushing pressure that's found at those depths. And with 800 species swimming around out there, naturally they come in a wide range of sizes, from the tiny pygmy squid that measures just 0.3 of an inch or 10 millimeters, to the colossal squid, a beast that probably inspired the legend of the Kraken. These behemoths can grow to be between 33 and 45 feet long, 10 to 14 meters, and have been confirmed to reach a weight of nearly 1,100 pounds or 495 kilograms. It's been estimated, though, that they could get up to somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500 pounds, 6 to 700 kilograms, which is a best guess based on the beaks of larger specimens found in the stomachs of sperm whales.
Release the Kraken!
Release the Kraken indeed. Now, class cephalopod is divided into 2 subclasses, with one containing squid, cuttlefish, and octopus, and the other containing the nautiluses. But all of them are mollusks, technically shellfish, which you'd never guess by looking at squid, cuttlefish, and octopuses. I mean, where's the shell, right? The nautilus is the only cephalopod that still has an external shell. Cuttlefish have evolved so that their shell, if you even want to call it that, is internal. It's known as the cuttlebone. And while it's made of a crystalline form of calcium carbonate, it's not technically a bone, and it did evolve from the molluscan shell. Many octopuses and squid have a similar structure called a gladius, which is a feather or leaf-shaped structure made of chitin, the same stuff that insect exoskeletons are made of. Alright, let's talk more about cephalopod anatomy. The best description I read came from the Monterey Bay Aquarium's website, which said, quote, "If you were to rebuild yourself as an octopus, you'd take your torso, stick it atop your head, and then arrange your limbs around your face," unquote. That's quite the visual. The bag-like sac that sits over a cephalopod's eyes doesn't contain the brain. It's called the mantle, and it contains all the internal organs, including its 3 hearts, gills, reproductive organs, ink sac, and more. The brain is located behind the eyes, and it's shaped like a donut wrapped around the esophagus. In fact, when the cephalopod eats, the brain actually stretches slightly as food moves through the esophagus. Then there are the arms and/or tentacles. The technical term for these appendages is muscular hydrostats, which basically means muscles with no bones for support, which incidentally evolved from the primitive molluscan foot. Now, there actually is a difference between arms and tentacles. Arms are completely lined with suction cups. Tentacles, on the other hand, only have suction cups at the ends, which can be club-like or have hooks. So, which cephalopods have which kind of limbs? Well, I'm glad you asked. Technically, octopuses have 8 arms and 0 tentacles. Squids and cuttlefish have 8 arms and 2 tentacles, for a total of 10, yes, 10 muscular hydrostats, not 6 as probably most of us have always thought. And nautiluses, well, they have a whole bunch of tentacles and no arms. Now, at the center of all these limbs is a bird-like beak that's used for piercing and consuming food. In most species, this also features a tongue-like belt of teeth called the radula. The radula is used to rasp and break food into smaller pieces. Kind of important when your food passes right through the center of your brain. They feed by capturing prey with their tentacles or arms, drawing it to their mouth and taking bites. No surprises there, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Cephalopods produce a mixture of toxic digestive juices, some of which are manufactured by symbiotic algae. They eject these juices from their salivary glands onto the captured prey in their mouths. These juices separate the flesh from the bones or shell. The salivary gland also has a small tooth on the end which can be poked into an organism to digest it from within. Now, when it comes to senses, cephalopods have advanced vision. They can detect gravity with structures called statocysts, which are similar to our cochlea or inner ear, and they have a variety of chemical sensing organs. In general, most cephalopods are considered to be deaf, although some can detect sounds with those statocysts. They are, like I said, similar to our inner ears after all. With the exception of the nautilus, cephalopods generally rely on vision to detect predators and prey, and also to communicate with each other. Nautiluses rely more on smell for foraging and finding mates. Experiments have shown that the common octopus can distinguish the brightness, size, shape, and horizontal or vertical orientation of objects. But all octopuses and most other cephalopods are colorblind, which makes some sense. When you live in the deeper ocean, light doesn't reach all that far. Cephalopods move around using a number of methods. Many species of octopus use their arms to walk or crawl along the seabed. They might also swim, although they're generally not active swimmers in the way that, say, fish are. Squids and cuttlefish can move short distances in any direction by rippling a flap of muscle around the mantle. But unlike octopuses, squid are active swimmers. Thanks to a difference in the composition of the mantle, squid can travel long distances, with some moving over 1,200 miles, that's 2,000 kilometers, over the course of 2.5 months. But when hunting or escaping predators, most cephalopods will use a form of jet propulsion by forcefully expelling water from their mantle cavity. Now, while jetting, as it's called, is good for a burst of speed, indeed it makes cephalopods the fastest marine invertebrates and able to out-accelerate most fish. It's energy intensive. Good for hunting or escaping predators, not so great for long-distance travel. With the exception of the nautiluses and a handful of octopuses, all known cephalopods also have an ink sac, which can be used to expel a cloud of dark ink to confuse predators. This sac is a muscular bag which lies beneath the gut and opens into the anus. Its contents, almost pure melanin, can be squirted out and is distributed by the water ejected for jet propulsion. So it's a 2-for-1, confuse your predator and make a quick getaway. Now, the ink is usually mixed with mucus, so it forms a thick cloud, resulting in visual and possibly chemosensory impairment of the predator, like a smokescreen. But it gets even better. A more sophisticated behavior has been observed, where the cephalopod releases a cloud with a greater mucus content, and this cloud sort of forms the shape of the cephalopod that released it. This decoy is called a pseudomorph. A lot of times the predator mistakenly attacks the pseudomorph rather than the now rapidly departing cephalopod that produced it. But ink and jet propulsion aren't the only ways that cephalopods avoid predators. Of course, nautiluses rely on their shell for protection, but the rest of the cephalopods, with a few exceptions, are masters of disguise. Look at a squid, cuttlefish, or octopus, and their skin seems to pulse with an ever-changing display of colors and patterns. It almost doesn't look real, like somebody covered them with an LCD display. Now, this ability is thanks to two things. First, tiny sacs of pigment, called chromatophores, that expand and contract in response to the cephalopod's environment. But chromatophores only contain red, yellow, and brown pigments, so they can't produce the entire color spectrum. So then there are cells called iridophores. These cells reflect light in ways that can produce colors the chromatophores can't. Together, the chromatophores and iridophores can produce an astonishing range of colors and patterns. But again, it gets even better. Cephalopods have a third type of tissue that allows them to alter their skin texture. So they can not only match the color and pattern of, say, a rock or coral, they can match the texture too. And in some cases, they literally disguise themselves as other animals. The reef squid has been documented changing its appearance to appear as a non-threatening parrotfish to ambush unwary prey. And the mimic octopus, as its name would suggest, can disguise itself as a number of different venomous organisms that it shares a habitat with, as a way of deterring predators. But the interesting thing is, cephalopods don't consciously control this ability. Instead, the skin itself acts almost like an eye, taking in cues that elicit a colorful response. Remember I said that cephalopods are colorblind, and that makes this ability to camouflage almost seamlessly with their surroundings even more fascinating. But they also use this ability to communicate with each other. When rivals or potential mates are around, these dazzling displays can serve as either a warning or a sign that romance is in the air, the water, whatever. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about before we wrap this one up. I recently read something that basically said if it weren't for their short lifespan, generally less than 5 years, and their inability to pass on generational knowledge, humans would probably not be in charge of the planet. It would belong to the octopuses. Octopuses are well known to be the most intelligent of the invertebrates. An octopus's brain-to-body ratio is the largest of any invertebrate and larger than a lot of vertebrates. They have about the same number of neurons as a dog. Now, I told you that cephalopods have a donut-shaped brain, but each of the octopus's arms also contains what's basically a mini brain. About 2/3 of their neurons are in their arms. And each arm can act independently. It's able to taste, touch, and move without direction from the central brain. But if needed, the centralized donut brain can take over and exert top-down control. This lets octopuses complete tasks with their arms much more quickly and effectively. Octopuses have also been shown to use tools, either in the lab to get food or in the wild to build shelters and dens. One of the most impressive examples of tool use by octopuses was documented in 2019, when a few veined octopus individuals were observed collecting discarded coconut shells in Indonesia. After digging up the shells, the octopuses gave them a good cleaning with jets of water. Then they carried them to a new location and assembled them into a shelter. But in what's probably my favorite example of tool use in octopuses, small individuals of the common blanket octopus are known to carry around Portuguese man-o'-war tentacles and use them as a weapon. The tentacles carry a potent and painful venom, which the blanket octopus is immune to, but the octopus uses the tentacle on unwitting predators and prey. Octopuses are also known to throw things at each other, flinging shells, silt, algae, and other debris, and using jets of water to propel them toward the source of their irritation. Consequently, the targets have been observed ducking to avoid getting hit. This seems to be a way to defend territory and to get an annoying neighbor to leave them alone. Octopuses have also been shown to recognize people's faces, solve complex mazes and puzzles, and are adept at getting themselves into and out of containers. In one aquarium, the staff noticed fish going missing from a tank, so they set up a video camera. What they recorded was one of the octopuses getting out of its tank, going to the other tank, opening it, eating the fish, closing the lid, going back to its own tank, and hiding the evidence. Incidentally, spoiler alert, the octopus in Remarkably Bright Creature does this same thing. So, in some ways, I guess the book is based on actual events. So there you have it. I hope you have a better appreciation for how amazing cephalopods are. And I don't know about you, but I would welcome our 8-armed overlords should they figure out how to take over. All right, you know the rest. If you want to support the podcast, well, that would be wonderful. Here's some ways you can do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month. And with 3 paid months, you get some sweet Dispatches from the Forest merch. Visit patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest to get all the details. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com, which is also, of course, where you can email me if you have a question, a comment, or a request for a future episode. You can also donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. What about getting some Dispatches from the Forest merch? You can find the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/Dispatches from the Forest, then click on products and find something you like. Finally, follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest, may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.